So I'm 28, I live in Portugal, and honestly, I feel like I'm starting over again. And I know that probably sounds a little bit dramatic because from outside, my life looks pretty good. I live in Porto, I'm close to the ocean, I'm a photographer, I create content, I get to do a lot of things I used to dream about. But at the same time, I'm at the point of my life where I'm asking myself, what am I actually doing with my life? And I think it's something we don't talk about enough. You can move to another country, build a career, have an amazing experiences, and still feel like you have no idea what you are doing next. So today I wanted to sit down and talk about how my life looks like after moving to Portugal at 28. Not the Instagram version, the real version. If you are new here, I'm Alona. I'm originally from Ukraine, but I lived abroad quite a long time. One of the biggest chapters of my life was South Korea. I moved there when I was younger and ended up spending years there. And Korea was actually where I explored a lot of different creative careers. I worked as a photographer, including working with people from K-pop music industry. I also did acting and modeling there. And I was creating content throughout all of this. At one point, I also had the opportunity to work with government-related tourism initiatives as an influencer and ambassador, creating content to promote Korea and Korean tourism. And that experience was really important to me because it showed me that content creation could be bigger than just posting on social media. It could be a real career. I was creating content, working with brands, organizations, traveling around Korea, and showing people my experience of living there. So I was not following one straight career path. I was trying different things, seeing what I enjoyed, meeting people, and figuring out what I actually can build for myself. Eventually, photography became one of the biggest parts of my career. I started photographing tourists in Seoul, built my own photography business, and it became something I actually could make money from. But Korea was not just a place where I worked. It was home. I spent years there. I built relationships there. I built a career there. A lot of my adult life happened there. And that's why living was not an easy decision. Because when you already built life somewhere, starting from zero in another country is scary. Even if you're excited about it, even if you know you want to change, you still have this feeling of, okay, but what if I don't manage to build it again? Before Portugal, though, there was another chapter that I don't want to skip. I lived in Bali for about 6 months. And looking back, I think I really needed that time. I was not there with everything planned out. I was actually trying to figure out what I want to do next. I had already spent years in Korea. I had photography, I had experience in creative industry, I had content creation, I had worked with K-pop industry, I had tried acting and modeling, and I had even worked on projects to promote Korea as an influencer and ambassador. But I still was not completely sure what I wanted my chapter to look like. And Bali gave me this space to slow down and think. I had time to ask myself, where do I actually want to live? What kind of lifestyle do I want? What do I want to do for work? And what do I actually want my life to look like? And I think those 6 months helped me to understand that I simply don't want to go back to the same life I had before. I wanted something new. I wanted to be in Europe. I wanted to be closer to the ocean. I wanted to keep building my creative career. And I wanted a place where I can actually imagine building a life, not just staying for a few months. And that's when Portugal started to make sense. So, why Portugal? There was one single dramatic reason. I think it was a combination of everything I realized during that period. I wanted to be in Europe, I wanted to be close to the ocean, I wanted a slower lifestyle, and I wanted to see what my life could look like somewhere completely different from Korea. And eventually I ended up in Porto. And I fell in love with a lot of things here. The ocean, the weather, the architecture, the little cafes, the fact that you can actually drive for about an hour and suddenly you're surrounded by nature. And of course, Portugal is just incredibly beautiful, especially if you're a photographer. There is basically no shortage of places to shoot. But living somewhere and traveling somewhere are completely different things. And I think this is something I understood much better after moving here. When you're traveling, you don't really think about things like, how am I going to make money this month? What am I doing next year? What happens with my documents? How do I find clients? What if I don't earn enough? Where do I actually want to live long term? But when you're living abroad, those questions become really real. And that's probably the hardest part of starting over. You're not only changing your location, you're rebuilding your everyday life. Your work, your routine, your social circle, your plans, sometimes even your idea of who you are. And I think that's what I'm going through right now. So let's talk about work. I'm a photographer and that's what I've been doing for years. It's still a huge part of my life. I used to work mainly with tourists in Seoul, as well as different creative projects, including work connected to K-pop industry. And now I'm trying to build that again in Portugal, which sounds simple, but it's not. Because when you move somewhere new, nobody knows you. You don't have the same clients. You don't have the same network. You don't have the same reputation. You basically have to prove yourself again. And at the same time, I'm also creating content. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And honestly, YouTube is something I want to take more seriously. I already spent years creating content. I worked with brands, I work on tourist campaigns, I created content promoting Korea, so I know I enjoy this. But I want to see what happens if I actually treat YouTube as a long-term project, instead of just something I do when I have time. Because I don't want my entire future depend on one thing. I want to build different sources of income around creativity, photography, content, maybe other projects in the future. I don't know what it's going to look like yet, and I'm okay with that. But there is one part of being self-employed looks completely different online. Money. When you see someone traveling, taking photos, working from cafes and living abroad, it can look like, wow, what a dream life. But nobody sees the months when you don't have enough clients. Nobody sees the expenses. Nobody sees you wondering when next payment is coming. And I don't want to pretend I figure out everything financially. I don't. My income is not perfectly stable. And that's one of the things I actively try to change. I want more stability. But I also don't want to build my life where I have no freedom just because I'm scared of uncertainty. And I think finding that balance is going to be one of my biggest challenges. But despite all of that, I really like my life here. And I don't want this video sounds like I'm complaining about Portugal, because I'm not. There are so many little things that make me happy. I can wake up and go to the ocean. I can take my camera and explore somewhere new. I can get in the car and go on a random road trip. I can discover a tiny village I never heard of. And I can make living doing something creative. That's pretty amazing. Sometimes I actually stop and think, wait, this is my life? And those moments make all the uncertainty worth it. And here is another thing. I don't know if Portugal is going to be my forever home. And I actually think that's okay. I used to think that when you moved somewhere, you have to immediately decide, this is where I'm going to live for the next 10 years. But I don't think life works like that. Maybe I will stay in Portugal for years. Maybe I will move somewhere else. Maybe I will go to Korea one day. Maybe I will end up somewhere I haven't considered yet. I don't know. And honestly, I don't think I need to know at 28. And that's actually one of the reasons I want to take YouTube more seriously. I've done a lot of different things already. I've lived in different countries. I worked in photography. I worked around K-pop industry. I've done acting, I've done modeling. I've worked on projects to promote Korea as an influencer and ambassador. I created content for years. And now I'm in Portugal trying to figure out what comes next. So I want to document this period of my life. Not because I think I have everything figured out, actually quite the opposite. I want to document what happens when you don't have everything figured out. Building a business, trying to grow on social media, moving countries, traveling, trying to make money doing creative work, finding out what life actually makes you happy. And maybe a few years from now, I'll look back at these videos and think, wow, I really had no idea what was going to happen. And I think that would be pretty cool. So I guess this is where I am right now. I'm 28, I live in Portugal. I already lived a few completely different lives. I spent years in Korea. I worked in photography and K-pop industry. I tried acting and modeling. I worked as an influencer and ambassador on a project promoting Korea. I created content. Then I spent 6 months in Bali, which gave me space to stop and think about what I actually wanted next. And now I'm here, starting another chapter. I don't have a perfect plan. I don't have everything figured out. But I do know I want more freedom. I want to create, I want to travel, I want to build something that's mine. And I want to see how far I can actually take it. So if you're also figuring out your life, living abroad, thinking about moving, or just wondering what you're supposed to be doing at 28, you might want to stick around because I have a feeling that next chapter is going to be very interesting. I will see you in the next video.